This is Inside the Game, where passion meets precision. Jonathan Turner, Nathan Wangler, and John Natale are your hosts, breaking down every goal, every controversy, every match that matters. From the heart of American soccer to the global stage. No fluff, just football. Weekdays at 9 a.m. live on YouTube, Roku TV, Facebook, Twitter, and all listening platforms. Step in, speak up, stay locked in. This is Inside the Game. Well, good morning. It is Tuesday. It is the 13th of May. It is my aunt's birthday. I don't know how old she is, but happy birthday, Aunt Chris. And we're excited to have you along for the ride here today. A lot to talk about in the soccer world. And, we get into this each and every day here on this show. A lot of things going on in the country, right, when it comes to soccer. A lot of things going on around the world as it comes to soccer. And we talked US Open Cup last week. And we have a special guest here today in studio with me, even though it might not look like he's in studio. He will be in studio with us. His name is Jason Collinsworth. He will join us here in a little bit to talk about soccer, specifically on the East Coast, because, again, we are here in the Midwest, and it's always good to kind of see what is happening in other parts of the country. But before we dive into that, Nathan Wangler on my left, Mr. John Natale is on my, well, actually, technically it's on my right is Nathan. On my left would actually be Natale, but on your screen, right and left, whatever. Natale, how's everybody doing this morning?
We're doing good.
I'm hanging.
Yeah, I mean, yesterday was Monday. I know all of us run around like chickens with our heads cut off on Monday. We try to figure it out, and we don't. So that's how we end up here on Tuesday, all miscombobulated and like 4 seconds before we go on. So what are we going to talk about? Oh, 1, 2, 3.
Yep. Yeah, it was funny because I was tossing out, like, we talk politics or religion, and you're like, no. It's like,
I was almost up and out.
What is wrong with you? Don't do that. No, I mean, I get it. Really cool, though. We were talking about this a little bit. Our Roku channel is starting to take off, which is really, really cool. Right now, 120 people on Roku are watching this. So if you have a Roku TV, you can definitely watch us there. Obviously, we are available on YouTube and Twitter and Facebook, and of course, all listening platforms. And I like this, though. Best morning podcast. That's good, man. I like that. Best morning that's a good, strong statement right there, I think. But either way, hey, this is your show too. Get involved in the comments. What is on your mind in the soccer world? Let us know. We'll talk about it. That's the really cool thing about this, is we'll actually be engaged with you. And there's the coffee firm right there. Good morning. Coffee firm. But hey, here's what I wanted to kind of quickly talk about this morning. As we talk about this and the amount of games that we have this week, we've got 66 broadcasts in total. Last week we had 22. The following week, going into next week, we have 127 broadcasts. And then the following week, I lost count at 200 and something. But anyways, to put things in perspective, I talk about perspective a lot. Right. I talk about and things in perspective. Right. We last year in totality did just over 400 games. Right. Last year in October, we, for the first time ever, did 2 games at the same time. Right. That was in October. Maybe it was September, but definitely October. And then we went from 2 games to 3 games. Remember that, Nathan? You were actually on one of those games. Grand Rapids, you were out at Forest Hills Central, right? And we had a game in Romeo and a game at Royal Oak, I think. Like 3 games at the same time. It was the first time that we'd ever obviously done that. And now we're doing upwards of 8, 9 at the same time. And then next week we'll be up to over 30 games at the same time. Right, to put that in perspective, it's really cool, right? And at the same time, it's scary. It's like a horror show every Saturday night here in the studios. I mean, when we leave here at 1:00 in the morning, there's pizza everywhere. There's tears and
Oh,
sweat.
darn.
You know,
barbecue sauce, those chicken skewers you get.
blood. It's like a massacre in here every
blood.
Yep.
Blood.
Hurt feelings. A lot of those.
It's not good. It's just not. It's not good. And then you got to wake up and do it again the next morning. But I got to tell you this story. As part of the growing pains we experience, it's in the scheduling. There's a lot of scheduling that has to go on, right? And Bianca, who does a fantastic job for us, my wife, beautiful wife, who left, her cushy job to come work for us. She went on vacation last week, right? We talked about that, and I was a single dad for a few days, and it was hell, right? Anyways, I'm leaving the studio on Sunday morning, because it's now Sunday morning. And we only had 3 games on Sunday. It was a light day. Well, actually 2 games and a high school ranking show. That's all we had scheduled for Sunday afternoon. First game was going to kick off at 7:30. Next game was at 8:00, and then our ranking show. And I just so happened, as I'm driving, this sounds terrible. Yes, I had my Instagram open, just looking at something at the light. And I'm looking there, and I see home opener tomorrow, USLW Union FC Macomb Women's, kicking off at 4:30. And I'm going, well, we're their like broadcast partners. So I'm like, they don't have a game tomorrow because it's not on my schedule. It's like there ain't no game on my schedule. So I'm looking at our master schedule. I'm looking at I'm like, there's no game. We have the men's game at 7:30. And so I looked at my daughter. I'm like, well, I guess we're doing a game tomorrow at 4:30. So now we're going into all these different planning stages of how to get this thing, to pull this thing off, guys. Like, we're trying to, I'm supposed to have Mother's Day like lunch with my mom at 2:00 in the afternoon. And I looked at Brett. I guess I don't think we're doing Mother's Day dinner now, because this game kicks off at 4:30. There ain't no way I'm going to be eating food and get to the studio and do what we have to do in order. I know that wasn't proper English, but that was exactly what I said in my mind. There's no way. So I contacted our camera operator. I was like, hey, bro, like, can you get out there like 4 hours earlier than you were supposed to? I know it's Mother's Day. He's like, I got you. I'm like, he's like, I got you. I'm like, my gosh, yes, you do have me. This was great. So, but we pulled it off, man. We pulled off that 4:30 game, USLW, but it was not on our schedule. And these are the things that are starting to, like, this is the part I'm talking about where it's like a massacre on Sundays, these at night, because you're going through this and going, oh my gosh, there's another game. There's like another game. There's another game. Oh, there's another game. And even like on Saturday, we were not supposed to do the Michigan Wolves Vardar games. They called me. I told you, they called me on like Friday and said, can you do this? And we pulled it together on Saturday. So we pulled together 3 broadcasts this weekend that were not supposed to happen. Well, they were supposed to happen, but they weren't. But I guess that's the nuance of being in our roles. But enough about that. I thought it was an interesting conversation about perspective. This perspective, and I know it's real easy for somebody who's sitting and watching it on TV going, man, I wish this was better. I wish this would be a little bit different. I wish they would get their stuff together, right? I think that's the first thing that we do, right? We want to complain and bitch and moan about how things aren't great and perfect and right. And even then, they're not, right? Because even when I say it's perfect, it's not perfect, right? Even what you think is perfect isn't perfect, because it's all about perspective, right?
Well, JT, I would like to piggyback off of that, because there was something I was going to share with you, but I might as well do it here on the air now. Is that we had our match with Real Central New Jersey on Sunday, and that they use the VO cam, which in all honesty isn't the best technology out there, but it does work, and it gives us something. Got a text early this morning from the head coach of Aloy Soccer Club, and said that he'd like to talk to his boss, JR, about being a partner with National Soccer Network because of what we have to offer. So nice. Even that right there, not using what we're fully capable of, using the resources that we have, and taking that above and beyond as much as we can, but to have that and knowing that there's another team out there that, like, hey, this is better than what we have based on what National Soccer Network does in the same league, say conference, a league that we're trying to build, the APSL. And I was like, at 7:23 in the morning, that he took
Yeah.
the time to do that. I didn't follow up with him. We didn't do anything like, hey, coach, what do you think about this? Is that they reached out to us. So that's kudos to you. That's kudos to what we do here at NSN. It's kudos to Premier Soccer Group and everything that we talk about how we can get these teams involved. So right off of that, it works.
It does. If you again, if you're used to watching a game on Apple TV, well, you're going to be disappointed if you watch and compare that to us. I mean, in some level you would be. But again, we're so used to, as an American fan, we're used to watching high level games on Apple TV, on ESPN, on FS1, right? We're used to watching these kind of full productions, right? You're the Premier League across the pond. That's what we're used to watching. We're not used to watching amateur soccer, via VO, at 6:00 at the local park. We're not used to that. So if you're going to compare me to Apple TV, of course you're going to be extremely disappointed. And I wish you luck, and you should probably put a helmet on. I mean, it's like,
well,
because life sometimes sucks and it's not great, right? I mean, let's be honest. We lose feeds all the time. You're going to hit your head against the table because it's like frustrating and it's annoying. So put a helmet on, I mean, that because it's going to be rough. And you know what? It's amateur soccer at its finest, where sometimes the goals have holes in them. Sometimes the referees don't show up. Sometimes you don't have enough players. I mean,
I'm just going through my checklist of everything that's happened to me in the past 2 weeks.
Yeah. I mean, the lights might not turn on. I mean, there's so many reasons as to why a game might not work, and and to put things in perspective, if this is a piece of paper and on here's a list of things, right? I can tell you right now, on any amateur team, we are like down here somewhere on the things that have importance. We're not number one. So it's not a number one priority. Because you know why? If it was number one priority, it'd be done so much better all the time.
I want to ask
just from me, but from the people who are.
I want to ask you two something, and this is on we touched on it, a personal thing. And Nate, I'll start with you. As play-by-play guys, we're always looking to be up here. We want that next step. As soccer guys, hey, if we could do an MLS match, oh my gosh, it would be heaven and hell. It'd be fantastic. If somehow we are asked and say, hey, this is Juventus calling, would you like to, that's where we kind of want to be. However, based on what we do with a lot of these amateur clubs, whether it is APSL, the MPSL, WSL, whatever it is, Nate, do you kind of find some solace in doing those amateur matches because that you're elevating what these players would most likely not normally get? Like, do you put a little bit more emphasis on it to say, hey, yeah, these guys have 9 to 5. Some of them don't show because they're at their daughter's recital or at their son's first basketball game or whatnot. But when they get out there putting in their sacrifice and you get a chance to call them like they would on Apple TV or Fox, does that give you a little bit more energy down in the gut?
As someone who's worked in the professional realm with G League teams and minor league baseball, when you get to that level, it's an expectation. People expect it, right? You're going to sound polished. You're going to know what you're talking about. When you get into that booth, it's a little bit different. Now, when we talk about college athletics, club athletics, amateur athletics, again, it could be soccer, really could be anything. The appreciation is just the fact that it's on and that they have someone covering them with the amount of passion that we do and actually caring about it. And even if that means getting up in people's chests a little bit, it's okay, because half of our job is remaining comfortable while being uncomfortable. Like, I feel like half of my week is spent in a position that seems like it's compromising, but we have to fight through that, right? So that's something that we get used to. And there's a level of appreciation just by doing it, and then you bring in the polished look and the polished feel and the polished sound, and people go crazy over it. But just the simple act of being there and covering it, you'd be amazed how much an outpouring of appreciation, and a lot of it from players and players' families too. Because again, being able to look back at their highlight and hear a call, being able to see that someone's actually there and putting forward the effort to cover them. The one thing that we're missing, and I said this to you on one of our previous episodes, a lot of it's media. The media really dictates terms on who cares about what. And that is true. So the more media we could get there, whether it be play-by-play, whether it be anybody else, there is a level of appreciation that comes with that. And that's why I love working at the lower levels. Do I want to be in an MLS stadium? Yes. Would I love to be doing Sunday night baseball? Absolutely. But where we are and what we're doing, even with, or like when we were in Columbus a few years back at the Crew Stadium, that would be a beautiful press box to be in on a nightly basis. That'd be sick. But in the meantime, if we can give people something that they really haven't had in the past or had to the level that we're willing to go to, I'm all for it. Yeah, and there is a certain level of appreciation that comes with that, 100%.
JT, you've done more games than probably Nate and I combined, it seems like, and you've done it all across the board. What are your thoughts on it? I mean, even like the game I did the past week, Athens and Troy, I know that has like a high stakes feel to it just because of what it is to the state of Michigan. But when you're doing, let's say a Midwest Premier League game or a USL or a UPSL game or something versus some of the other ones that you've done that maybe have gotten some more national coverage on top of what you do. Do you feel that too? Like, I'm providing something that these athletes and these coaches and these fans don't get on a regular basis as those MLS teams or USL championship teams or whatnot. Do you feel that too, as considering how many games you have done?
Yeah, I mean, aside from the first couple games that I've ever done, back in three years ago, I would say yes. But I think for me, the way I call a game is the same as I call it for a U12 game. So what I do at a national, UPSL national championship game. They're the same. And I believe we owe that, to the game of soccer, to the sport in general. Again, because the player if you ever listen or watch one of my games, and I obviously I can speak to Nathan and speak to you as well. I've listened to your game, so I know you have the same attribute. But it's like that. We want the players to feel as though this means something on some level, and we provide that. Like, the commentator is the one that provides that. We're the one that sets the tone. If I'm on the microphone going, yeah, that's a great pass and goal, woo, it doesn't work, right? That's why I have to uncork. I have to get passionate. I have to stay focused and not necessarily focused on the game in general, but I have to stay focused on the task at hand, which is to elevate the game, right? And if I can do that every single time, regardless of who's playing, that's all that matters. And that's what I do. I do that for every game, regardless of whether or not it's a U13 game or it's a national championship game. I give the same level of enthusiasm and dedication to the teams that are on the field, regardless if I know their names or not, because in most cases I don't. In most cases I said their name's probably wrong. Right. But I'm, with the information that we're given, I do what I believe is the right thing to do, which is to really highlight, regardless of what the level is, give them the same call. So yes, I think that's our responsibilities as commentators. And what I want to do now is, I know this is a great conversation. Obviously, we've got a great guest here in studio today. He has his own podcast, and I had a chance to sit down with Jason Collingsworth here earlier this weekend to talk about what we're doing here at the National Soccer Network. It was a great conversation. I believe he'll be out here in a couple of weeks. But that was a great chance to do that. But he also, aside from his podcast, which, by the way, is a very unique name, I'm going to let him kind of introduce the name. I think it's a great way for him to talk about it, because it's a sarcastic, kind of like, look at the game of soccer. But he also is a trainer, and he spends his days and his evenings training players, in Buffalo, New York, soccer, right? And former coach. A funny story about that. We'll get into that as well. But Jason Collingsworth we'll welcoming him into Inside the Game, and there he is. What up, Mr. Collingsworth? How are you?
Thanks. Good. Thanks for having me. I love that conversation that you guys were just having, because you guys magnify local soccer. and now I know that you guys do games remotely, but for our local players to be able to watch a local pro game that they didn't even know existed, or a club that didn't even know existed, it allows them to see what a semi-pro game could look like. And I think you guys are just doing unbelievable work because you're bringing soccer to people that otherwise you wouldn't. There's so many games that go on that people don't even know go on because there's just so many. How many games did you guys do Saturday? 40?
No, we did 11 on Saturday. It
But
felt like
it
40.
seemed it seemed like 40. And man, when you guys were talking about like things that go wrong, it was funny, John. As soon as I got home, you did a game, and the camera was not up in the stands. It was like field level. That one was fun to watch.
Yes, it was. It was hard to call. And it was windy and it was sunny, so our camera operator couldn't see. And this is the nuance too, right? So we ask our coaches and our teams that we partner with, hey, like, what's your setup like, right? Where are we going to put our camera? They're like, yeah, we got a press box. You can go there. Well, but not all press boxes are created equal, right? And so this press box out of Ottawa High School, whatever it's called, Ottawa Kent High School, I think is what it's called. It's one of these press boxes that's just made up of wood. It's straight up. There's no roof to it, and it's got windows, so you can just hang out in there. But there's no place for you to actually set up a camera up top. So that information was not provided to us. And then there was no power on the other side of the field. So, and we didn't bring our portable battery pack, so we were forced to set up shop, field level, where the fourth official kept standing right in front of the camera. And I kept telling our camera operator, I'm like texting our camera, I'm like, Sam, if he does not, I go, this fourth official is not going to live the rest of the game. I mean, we're going to have to take him out. You're going to see the fourth official just knocked out because he kept walking in front of the camera. And this is the thing too. I got to say this to referees out there. I know you have a job to do. And I love you because I was a referee for 20 years. But you don't need to be standing in front of the camera. Okay, just stand off to the side. Your job is important, but it's not one in which you have to be in front of a camera in order to do it. Okay, so just that's my message to you. But Jason, enough about referees, and let's talk about this. Let's talk about your podcast because it's a really interesting one. Yep. And I actually have up here right over there. I'm going the opposite way of my hand there, but yeah, right there. That's the shirt right there. I hate soccer.
Yep. I Hate Soccer podcast. Yeah, because sarcastically, every week I talk to players and parents. Now, I run a supplemental soccer training company, and so they kind of allow my hour with them to be a therapy session, and they get they ask me for advice or my 2 cents or what do I think about this. And then from that perspective, what I hear from those parents and players, I hate soccer. The things that some of these parents and players go through, some of these coaches, some of these refs, it can be daunting. It could be exhausting because I see all the things that I fell in love with the game because of how beautiful the game was. We talked about it a couple weeks ago on my podcast. It's like, what's the first World Cup that you remember? Well, for me, it was 1994, and that's when I fell in love with the game. But the longer that I've coached, the longer that I've been involved and see all the workings and everything that goes on, that love slowly goes away. And we forget that it's about the players. It's about the kid. And that's the small version of why it's called I Hate Soccer, because I think we could do a better job from the coaching standpoint, from an organizational standpoint, and I mean, let's not even get into our soccer system because that's kind of the catalyst of it all.
I would definitely agree with that statement. Nathan, I know you got a question.
No, I was just going to double down on that. I'd love to hear what your opinion is on that, specifically the development side of it, because you said something the other day, JT, that I found fascinating, that kids are at 18 months, as young as 18 months, are actually starting to play the game. And we actually had, part of our network here on NSN, we actually have a correspondent. I don't know what you would call her. She's a social media content creator, lives out in Los Angeles, but she was talking about how like 3-4 years old, like they're starting to take looks at these kids and starting to talk about what clubs they should be a part of and where they should go. And you stop and you think about it, and in a lot of it, in my mind, I think obviously wraps back to getting the parents committed, because once they're committed, they're going to spend whatever they need to in order to not only satisfy what their kid wants, but also do the I'm being a good parent thing. Like, I'm getting them where they need to go. I'm getting them to that next level, which is fine, but in my mind, it also can be a little twisted too. The fact that we're looking at kids that are that young. I mean, they don't even know who they are. They don't know what the world is. They don't know anything like that. And yet we're filling their heads with these ideas that they're going to be the greatest ever. And you just have to follow all of these steps and do it with us in order to get to that point, and so I think it's interesting. I'd love to hear more about what you've seen, at least in particular, on that side of the game.
Well, I think there's two ways to look at it, because I do believe that soccer starts at home, and the culture of having a ball at your feet at 2 or 3 years old will get you a head start. But I just saw a 2018 pre-ECNL tryout listed. It's like, wait, what? What are we doing? Why 2018? How old are kids that were born in 2018? 7 years old? They're
Good math,
7
everybody.
year. It's ridiculous. And that's the part. These kids aren't even soccer players yet, but we have pre-ECNL. We have kids specializing soccer only, playing center back only, playing outside back only, playing you're going to be a forward. That's 6, 7, and 8 years old. They're not even a soccer player yet. They don't even know if they love the game, and we're forcing kind of insanity on some of this. I don't even know where to go with that.
No.
Well, it's in your show. I hate soccer.
Yeah.
There you go.
Because, man, I feel like clubs are all about growth, where it's obviously a bottom line. It's become a bottom line business, and they almost want to claim kids earlier and earlier and earlier. And you touched a nerve with that one, but I can't even. You can understand where I get so frustrated with the system, right? And then we have competing organizations. We have ECNL, we have MLS Next, we have USL Academy now. We still have US Youth Soccer. How is a soccer parent supposed to navigate the entire soccer system when there is no pyramid, and US Soccer could not care less about youth soccer as a whole? They were founded in 1913. They didn't have their own league until 2007 with the Boys DA. Everybody thinks USYSA is US Soccer. It's not. It's contracted out. That they started in the 70s. And then AYSO came in, and then the DA, when the DA was formed in 2007, people are like, well, what about the women? What about the girls? And they're like, well, we're really good on the girls. Don't worry about that. So then ECNL was formed 2 years later in 2009 by US Club Soccer. And now today's climate, it is a arms race between MLS Next and ECNL. And it's who can accumulate the most clubs. And it's crazy, especially in Michigan. I cannot believe how many MLS Next and ECNL clubs are here. Whereas where I'm at right now in Buffalo, we have one ECNL club. And we have one MLS Next club that's an hour and 15 minutes away. It's
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it almost seems like too much of a business to be a sport, but it's also the most popular sport in the world. And yet, for some reason, we've crossed those paths here in the United States. And that's why everyone refers, I feel like they look overseas and they're like, well, that's the pure form of the game. Like, that's how it should be played. The spirit of the game is what carries that society. Whereas over here, we've turned it into so much of a business that it's tough to watch and it's tough to talk about. And JT and I have mentioned this, like, are we leaving players on the chopping block? Are we leaving some of the best talent on the table because of the system we've created?
Oh, most certainly.
JT?
Yeah, I was going to say this, and I think it's a great question, and we've talked about this a lot, and the answer is yes, of course we are. But here's the thing, too, right? Because we're all humans. Is that if you hurt my feelings, I don't want to coach you anymore. Like, right? I mean, let's be honest, right? You hurt my feelings, I don't want to coach you anymore. You know what? How many players get screwed in this country or in the world, for that matter, where they had a confrontation with their coach, or a parent has, and now the player's done. They're written off. How often does that happen? It happens all the time.
All the
How many
time.
players have been shafted over that?
Oh, too many. And with a closed system, not having an open league system where you can earn your way into the league, there are so many players left behind. That's why I think what you guys are doing is amazing, to be able to promote these the kind of the unseen, untapped players that are out there. There are players all over this country that have never stepped foot on an ECNL field or on an MLS Next field or a USL field that are amazing, but it's just the access to it and the business side of it kind of holds the game back. For instance, we're in Michigan. We're in what? Washington? Where are we, JT?
Shelby Township.
Shelby Township. Where Nationals are right here. Hawks are 30 minutes away. You got Liverpool that's 20 minutes away. You have all these different options. Yet in Buffalo, they kind of have an hour and a half radius right around Buffalo. They have kids from Canada coming down. They have kids from all the way to Syracuse coming over. We have Erie, Pennsylvania kids coming up, and they have a stranglehold on the talent in Buffalo. And a few of the coaches are breaking off to join the new USL project, Buffalo Pro Soccer. The coaches that are trying to leave Flash to go and join the youth side of the Buffalo Pro Soccer project, Flash is fighting and made them sign a non-compete where a U9 girls coach can't go over and coach U9 girls of a new club because they have such a stranglehold on the community. That's the type of stuff that is going on. And you just said about the kid is being left behind. Where is this about the kids? You're blocking the game. You're blocking another option. We want options, right? If we only have one choice, that can't be good.
No, it's not. And speaking of that, I actually had to have you sign a non-disclosure agreement and non-compete for your podcast before the show. Did you do that, by the way, or no?
Yeah, I sent it to you. I emailed it to you.
But no, and again, and I know, John, you got a question you want to get in as well, but it's a great point. And here's the thing, and I oftentimes, and we're not going to get into religion or politics, but oftentimes I used to say this conversation to churches all the time when I was selling advertising back in the day, is that your job on Sunday is to get people in the seats, right? Your job, if you want to get more in the coffer, you have to get more people to come into your church. Mm-hmm. So what do? You have to advertise. So if you treat your church like a business, then people will come in and you'll get more money in the coffer. Now that sounds terrible, but that's exactly what churches are designed to do. They are designed to get people in the seats, and then in turn you get their 10%. And that's how they survive. Soccer and what's happening within the club space is that it's proprietary. We want to protect it. I want my play. Look at what's happening, not just with within the club environment. Look what happened in the club and high school environment, where we talked about this. You have players who sign these contracts for a year, and they want to go back and they want to play their senior year with their high school. And clubs are like, no, you signed your contract, you can't do that. And now clubs are getting into this big. They're threatening players, and then parents are like, well, we're going to leave and we're done. And it's like, hey, this is about players. This is about players. I apologize, our office phone's going off here, but we'll let that ring. But it's not. And I think that there's a lot of great things that clubs do. I do. I think there's a lot of great things that they do great. The trainings and the opportunity that is created within those environments. All of that is great. But the negatives are they're so out there. They're so recognizable that are causing these problems in the space. And we talked about it yesterday on the money situation, about how in places like Troy here in Michigan that are, obviously affluent, they have lots of money. Parents don't have a problem spending $17,000 a year on their kid to go play travel soccer. But a kid in Pontiac who lives within 5 to 7 miles of where most of soccer in this state is happening, they can't afford to be even in the conversation to get a ride to said games or trainings. Right. And so, and I think, I think they're part of this too, is that there's not a club on earth that doesn't want to win soccer games. Right. They want to win. And the more you win, the more you attract players. Right. That's how this works. Mm-hmm. So you want players, you want clubs that want to win, but not at all costs. And I think that's what we're seeing. I think we're seeing the environment where we want to win at all costs. We don't care what it costs us to get that victory, as a club. We have 12 national championships. We've got, 30 players who are playing Division I college soccer in the Big Ten and the SEC. Oh my God, that's unbelievable. If you want that, you got to come be with us, But let's be honest, Jason, you train a lot of players. You are a trainer. Of all the players that walk into your environment or that you have coached over the years, you could pretty much from the get-go determine pretty quickly if they have what it takes. I'm not saying that you necessarily can say this is it, but a player walking in at 11 years old, kicking the ball around, you can say, oh, you know what? That player's pretty good. It's going to take some work, maybe, but you could probably tell pretty quickly whether or not a player has the it factor. Am I wrong in saying that or asking that question?
No, you're spot on. I can tell if a player's parents played just by what we do in the first 15 minutes of meeting a kid. I could tell if their parents played. I could tell. You're spot on. And I try to get away from the first impression problem that some coaches have, where, at U8 you were this, and then at U12, if I see a player at U12 that I haven't seen since U8, we as coaches, we always think of that player as, well, they can't play at that level because we remember what they looked like at U8. And players do develop, but at the same time, you're absolutely right. When you see a 10-year-old that can juggle a tennis ball 15 times at 10 years old, because that's one of the warm-ups that we do, yeah, I could tell right off the bat I was like, you know what, going to be a top player. And from my time back here in Michigan to my 10 years now in Buffalo, the players that had parents that played are almost always the best players. No question. But yes, you can tell very young. Arsene Wenger used to always say that he could tell if a kid was going to be pro by 12 years old. It's like, that's kind of crazy to me, but makes sense.
It's a great perspective. And I know we're going to have a question about perspective in a second. And I just want to run one quick follow-up in regards to that, is that do you think that clubs across this country, not just in one specific area, are being honest with players like that? Do you think that at 16 years old, because I'll give you an example. We have players that come to us for highlight videos, and we go and do those for them because it's a service that we provide. But then you watch the video and you're like, okay, yeah. That was a good video, that was good, and like I hate soccer videos, it's like, like that was really good, but I mean, in all honesty and sincerity, like, okay, so did someone tell this family that their kid's not that great? Like, I mean, you know what I mean? Like, are we having those conversations? Because as a coach, I would tell players like, yeah, I love your work ethic, love what you're doing, but you're here and everybody else is up here, and there's no way to bridge that gap in the next 6 months because you're like 5 years behind them. You're like 5-6 years. Are clubs being honest with these kids and these parents about what their kids can do, or they just want to say, you know what, keep them in the system. Let's see if they can develop. Let's not like make any noise, and let's just push them through and see what happens at the end.
A lot of clubs aren't cutting kids anymore. Now, they might not make their A team or their top team, but we have a smaller club in the area that has, I want to say they have 8 U11 boys teams. And it's just it's small travel, but 8. What are we doing? You want to talk? That's a bottom line decision. That's not a soccer decision. Why do we have 8 teams in one age group? So what clubs do is they won't cut a kid because maybe they're a late bloomer, but for the most part, clubs aren't honest. That's why from year to year, there isn't a lot of up and down movement within a club. Think of an RL girl who's been on RL for 3, 4, 5 years. They rarely move up to the ECNL. And at the same stroke, unless somebody from the outside from 2 hours away is coming in, I haven't seen anybody necessarily drop from the top ECNL where I'm at to the RL. Why? Is it the relationship that parents and the coaches have? Money comes into play because of donations, or maybe they've had 4 or 5 kids in that club where clubs feel, hey, we have to have her. We have to have her on the team because that's 5 payments to this club. So no coach likes to cut kids. I've never met a coach that wants to cut a kid. So what ends up happening, sadly, a lot of players are treated very poorly so that the kid will eventually cut themselves from the team.
Wow.
Or they will quit. That's what's going on in college all over the place. And that's why the transfer portal looks like it does. It's
Jason,
not...
I'm glad that you brought up college, because there is something I want to ask you, and it goes back to where you're from in Buffalo. Real small world. So you have the Buffalo Bulls up there, Mac School. Not a huge program, but they're there. Mm-hmm. And ironically, the head coach, Sean Burke, I actually played high school soccer with Sean at Berea High School in Cleveland. So I have a relationship with him, and I was so ecstatic when he got the job. But when I look at, you mentioned just how little of a professional presence there is in Buffalo. I kind of compare that here to Indianapolis, because even though Indianapolis is doing really well as far as the Indy 11, and there are some other aspiring clubs that are up and coming, soccer sits 45 minutes south of me in Bloomington, Indiana, IU. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's where it is. That's the hub of it. That's where everybody comes out of. That's where everybody wants to go. But as far as Buffalo is concerned, with having the Bulls there, does that draw anything? I mean, do people pay attention to it? Do they recognize that, yes, this is the D1 program? Buffalo is a marvel. I love Buffalo. My gosh. It feeds off the Bills, though. And we know that. It's, that's just the way it is up there. And so do they have any dent in the soccer scene up in Buffalo?
They do. But the one issue that UB has had is being able to keep the youth Buffalo kids to want to go there, because it's kind of like it's almost like a kid here that would want to go to OU. It's too small for some of like the top players, but if you want to talk about draw and who is paying attention, sometimes the women's soccer games at UB have just as many fans as their football games.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
especially when in years where they've done really well. One of my employees actually played for Sean at UB. One of my trainers, and what he's built, and thankfully the MAC still exists on the girls' side, because we know that on the boys' side the MAC is gone.
Yeah.
Losing the men's program at UB has almost destroyed all of Buffalo soccer on the boys' side, because we don't have access to it. We don't even see it. And then people will go to a Canisius game that's right down the street that's also D1, and people are like, wait, this is D1? And it's just, that's why I think
Yin and yang.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think that's why FC Buffalo has done pretty good in the USL2 and previously MPSL. The women are phenomenal, and most of those girls played at UB, or a lot of them do. And FC Buffalo women have a huge draw. That's our biggest draw. They have a home opener tonight in USLW. It's gonna be their first USLW game tonight.
Cool.
But I don't know if that answered your question, but
No, it did,
small
because
world.
again, I know that when you look at markets like that, like you can't compare them to, for you in Buffalo, you can't compare that to New York City. Here, or with with you, JT, you can't compare what goes on in Shelby Township or even Rochester Hills to what goes down on in Michigan. It's just a whole different animal. But that's why Indianapolis is so unique, because even though we do have the Indy 11, and that's the hub it's the highest level of professional soccer here in Indiana, that's not where the draw lies. It's in Bloomington, which hosts Indianapolis University, the Hoosiers, but that's the hub of soccer. So I was just curious to see how that market, which doesn't have a lot of the resources that a New York City has, or even Syracuse for that matter, a university that buries Buffalo as far as enrollment's concerned and what they're prestigious for, but you don't hear a lot about their soccer programs. I mean, the things that come out of Syracuse are their broadcasting department and their basketball. But basketball has since slipped since Boeheim's gone, so it's not really that thing anymore there. But you never hear about Syracuse soccer at all.
No, and the men just won the national title.
Yeah.
What was that? 3 years ago?
Yep.
2 years ago, maybe? Because there's not kids from New York on there. There's 2 kids in the entire roster, so we can't really relate to that Syracuse team because, well, I mean, I don't know if you want to get into it, but the international influence on the men's side, and also being an ACC program where you can go all over the country to recruit. And to be honest with you, as a state, New York on the boys' side, we just don't have that much talent. We don't have that much that many clubs doing it. And I mean, it's probably this. Do you think that's the same for the North Carolina Courage or another clubs in North Carolina? Because you got UNC and Duke right there.
Well, I think soccer really stems, at least me personally, in the southern states. Florida, North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia, that whole southern East Coast, the states there, is that those are always teams that are up top. You talk about UNC, you talk about Duke, North Carolina State, Wake Forest, that whole ACC is stacked in soccer,
Crazy.
absolutely stacked. But you have the anomalies. JT, you mentioned yesterday, and Nate, you know this too. On the women's side, Michigan State, always a contender. Here, I mean, I don't say anything. It's Indiana, but Notre Dame's women's is also always fantastic. So it's those little hot pockets, but then you go out to the West Coast, UCLA, Stanford, USC, but those are the warm weather teams. So I find it interesting, especially in a city like Buffalo, where you may as well have snow come late September, early October, playing on that pitch. It happens quite often. I know that. So it always intrigues me. And I don't get to talk to Sean a lot, but I do think about that because I do some MAC games here for like Ball State and I know Butler has hosted Buffalo a few times, and I've done one of their matches for that. But it just intrigues me about how some of these schools stay relevant when you're in a state like New York, where soccer is probably fourth dog behind football, basketball, and baseball.
Absolutely.
And softball, I should say. Yeah, the six sports.
And then the cream or the best of the best, the youth players, they want to go. They want to go away because they don't want to go to the local school because they almost look like the local school is a, quote, failure, but it's not.
Demotion, right.
Yeah, but it's not true at all. And so.
JT and Nate, going back on the Michigan State thing, for the soccer there at the D1 programs, whether it's Michigan, Michigan State, Central, Eastern, Western, whatever it is, do you guys get a lot of local talent, or is it people coming in from other states? Are they recruiting outside?
Yeah. Well, every university is a little different, but I can tell you here in Michigan, the only school in Michigan that's taken a proactive approach to bringing in local products has been Western Michigan on the boys and girls, women's and men's side.
Okay.
I don't know I think Central Michigan does a pretty good job, but that's just because of location. I just don't think there's a lot of players that want to come in to Central Michigan or Eastern Michigan. I think the MAC in general, the mid-majors can be a struggle to get that. But when you talk about highly competitive D1, Big Ten, SEC, the Power 5 schools, those players are coming in from California and Texas. There might be some players coming in from internationally. They'll come in, but they typically are traveling into. And it's funny because I actually talked with, the head coach, at Michigan here, the men's side, at Shaka Daly, and we talked about this. And I said, why are you looking to find more players to come in from Michigan? And Johnny goes, I would love more players from Michigan, but they don't want to get out of here.
Yeah.
No, I get it.
Yeah. All the players, and it gets weird because you ask yourself, and I ask players all the time, I go, where would you like to be in December? Because in Michigan, in November and December, that's when the NCAA tournament starts to happen, right? And so if you're hosting an NCAA tournament game, it's going to be 40 degrees and crappy.
Yeah.
Right. And maybe even colder than that. So you're now battling that aspect of it. And so, what would you rather have as a coach? A player who grew up in, Southern California, who's used to 75 and sunny and hasn't played on a snow field? Or would you rather have the player that grew up in Michigan that's been used to playing outdoors since they were a kid? And, they don't even care about wearing a jacket and they wear shorts when it's 20 degrees outside. I mean, like that. What would you rather have? I mean, I would rather have the player who's acclimated to the environment. But, again, you have to ask yourself what the priorities are. And I think it comes down to the money aspect of this, but I think a lot of players just want to leave.
Yeah.
They don't want to stay. They don't got to dodge.
I'll say Western's very forward about targeting Michigan-based talent. I mean, I feel like that's across the board too. I mean, heck, they just won the national championship in hockey. A lot of their roster was from Michigan. They didn't spend a single dollar worth of NIL money, which I think is fascinating. They might be the last team in history that's ever done that. Looking forward, but so Western does take that approach. I haven't done a ton of in terms of the Division I college soccer scene in Michigan, but I can speak to the one club that I spend the most time with, and that's Bethel University in South Bend. And I know I've mentioned that to you, Natalie, and they are the same exact way when it comes to getting mostly international talent. I mean, I would say it's about 95% of the team, but you walk this fine line because it would be nice and it'd be less expensive, frankly, to get players that are from Indiana. And I'm not saying that there isn't talent in Indiana. There is, and they've got a few, but you got to think about it this way is, there's also an expectation of winning at that program, of winning national championships, of making deep runs. And sometimes these connections that the coach specifically, I forget what his name. Tiago's his first name. I forget what his last name is off the top of my head. But a lot of his connections that he has and a lot of the top talent that comes to him is just not from here. And for whatever reason, that's just kind of been where he's had the most success. And frankly, for a lot of these programs, and I know this is true about Northwestern Ohio, they will go overseas with cash in their pockets and they'll go up to these kids and they'll be like, do you want to play soccer in the United States? Yes or no? And they'll go, yeah, absolutely. I want to go play in the US. Because sometimes I think a lot of these players in these different parts of the world, if you're not playing sports, chances are you're doing whatever dad's doing. You're doing whatever the family does. You're kind of slotting into what's expected of you. So if they see an opportunity to come play in the US, absolutely. Oh, you're going to give me money to do so? Yes. I'm going to take advantage of that wholeheartedly. Whereas when you're dealing with American players, you're maybe dealing with a different set of not only expectations, but maybe a different mentality, maybe a different level of ego because of what they've, their heads have been filled with growing up, going through the process. So there's a lot that goes into that. And it's different when you get European players or players from all over the world because they're like, yeah, absolutely. I'll do whatever you want to do. I'll go out, I'll bust ass, I'll play the way I always play, if you're giving money to me to come over and play. So that seems like a coach's dream versus I don't know if there's a different set of issues or things you have to deal with when it comes to American-based players. So that's my experience, at least working with Bethel for the last couple of years.
It's funny that I like what you said. All of you said it, is you said weather. People want to get out of Buffalo. People want to get out of Michigan. And when I talk about IU, Nate, you said, well, I'm sure there is talent in Indiana. It's the same thing. Mm-hmm. On the Hoosiers roster, out of the 21, 22 kids, there's only 5 that are actually from Indiana because they want to get out too. But they have 5 international players, and then the rest are coming in from the likes of Illinois and Texas and California and everything like that. So the talent's here, but at the same time, you think about like Notre Dame football, I think is a perfect example. Who wants to be in South Bend, Indiana at any time during the year? Nobody. But because it's Notre Dame football, that draws them and that allows them to be a contender. Right. Very strongly on the quotes there every year. But that's the intrigue of just playing for Notre Dame. Nobody wants to be in South Bend, Indiana. That's why places like IU, even though they've had some success in football, no one wants to come to IU to play football if they can go to Ohio State, which again, being in Columbus in the middle of December and into January, it's no fun there. I'm from Cleveland. I know what it's like down there. It's the same thing. Jason, just think about the Bills. How many games? Just you have to hire people off the streets to come shovel your stadium when it snows, and sometimes you have to move the games because it snows. So who's coming to Buffalo to play any sports? JT and Nate, who's coming to Western Michigan, or even Central or Eastern for that matter, even Ann Arbor and East Lansing. Like it's all covered in snow. So I understand when you're around it for your entire life and have an opportunity to get out, you're gonna take that. And I just think it's a shared point between all of us. We live in Midwest states, or kind of. I mean, Jason, you're like right there in that pocket though, but you're off the lakes. You're off the 5 Great Lakes, and so are JT and Nate. But weather affects so much, and I think just Mother Nature affects the talent of what each of our respective schools brings in just because of that alone.
Absolutely. I mean, it's ridiculous. You bring up the Bills. Don't even get me started. It's
okay.
We had 45 days of snow straight from, I think it was end of January all the way to mid-March. 45 straight days of snowfall. Who wants to go to college in that? Nobody. I don't want to be there. Just kidding.
Yeah, you'll do what you can and you get used to it. But again, just circling back to maybe some of these European kids or wherever they find them are willing to put up with that. They're willing to fight through that. I mean, or they don't know what they're getting into. That could also be another conversation. They get here, they're like, what did I just agree to? Maybe there's some of that involved, but yeah, I mean, that is a good point, Natalie. That's fair. I mean, weather certainly plays into it and all those other things, but I think it's fascinating. I think footballers in America versus footballers elsewhere around the globe, it's a different mindset. It's a different set of expectations. They had to come up maybe a little bit differently. There's a lot of that separates the two. And that's why I think it's important. And we've established this on the show before, like we're not the rest of the world. This is not the rest of the world. So we have to treat it differently here than what they treat it in the rest of the world. And I just like hearing people and how you would restructure it if you had the opportunity, because I do think it's fascinating. And it's not an easy one thing fits it. You can't fix it with one solution. Like there's multiple different layers to this. I just think it's fascinating to see what the differences are.
Yeah. I mean, how we could restructure, I don't know. I don't know how this genie gets put back in the bottle with all things, with the youth, with the internationals coming over, because I've changed. The more podcasts that I've done with people, the more that my podcast, I bring in a lot of the college players that we train, and they just tell us their entire, just their experience playing college soccer. And I used to be kind of anti-international influence, especially on the men's side, because it's taking spots from the American player. But at the same time, there's a lot of smaller schools, even at the D1 level, where a high school kid would be like, well, I kind of want a bigger school, or I want to make sure that it has this program, or I want it to have a football program where I could go on Saturdays. International kids don't care about that. They just want to continue. They just want to continue their career. Most of them are older. Most of them kind of aged out or didn't make it as a pro, so they're 20 years old coming in as a freshman. And I don't blame these college coaches either. Who would you rather train or coach? A 20-year-old closer to their prime, or a 17, 18-year-old kid right out of high school? A soccer player doesn't reach their prime until the age of 24. So we understand that, okay, now we have players that are older. We have a 24-year-old senior versus a 22-year-old senior. It makes sense. So, I mean, I have floated with just the international rule in college soccer. What if we adopted the Bundesliga rule, where the Bundesliga used to have, I believe it was 65% of their roster had to be eligible to play for the German national team? What if we did it where if you're an American college program, you have to be from the United States, Canada, or Mexico passport, 60% of it. Then that could fix it. One of my players, I don't know if I could say this. I can say it. I don't care. They have 20 scholarships. 19 of those scholarships are going to internationals. One American is getting a scholarship. It's my player, luckily.
Well, that was a great conversation here today. Whoa. And we are slightly over, but the great news is that I own the airwaves, which is fantastic. I get to make those decisions, which is always good. But here's the thing, Jason, we appreciate you stopping by today. I know you're traveling back to Buffalo. We'd love to have you on more and talk more soccer. So you're always welcome to join us here on Inside the Game. And funny, my phone starts ringing in the background. It's 10 o'clock. It's what starts to happen here. But either way,
thank you guys.
Yeah, we appreciate you stopping on in and being a part of this. But if you want to catch Jason, you can do it on YouTube, on Instagram, on TikTok. I Hate Soccer. And that's where you can catch him every single week as he releases a new show. But that'll wrap it up here for us on Inside the Game here on this Tuesday, May the 13th. Episode number 83 is in the books. Back at it tomorrow, same time, same place, right here on Inside the Game. This has been a presentation of the National Soccer Network.